the TBEST UI components. Okay, so basically with this section, we're going to be talking about how TBEST is set up in terms of the UI, what panels you have, what features you have that are kind of basic navigation features and tools that you can use inside of TBEST. So the basic UI setup is we looked at the Explorer panel over here on the left already. So this is our Explorer panel over here. But when you open up a network for editing, you get all of the other panels enabled. So that's something that we'll talk about in terms of editing. But this is the fully enabled workspace within TBEST, not workspace, UI, um, where the map panel is the main panel. You can't close the map panel. It always stays open. The other panels, the Explorer, the segments, the stops, routes panel, map control, render routes, all of those are dockable, pinnable, floatable panels that you can pick up and drag around. You can dock to the left-hand side or right-hand side or the bottom. So you can move them around to create what you want in terms of your workspace. And we're going to in this section, we'll talk about each panel and describe what its function is and how it works overall in TBEST. Okay. Okay, so just an example of the dockable panels, right? So as an example, we have our map control panel over here on the right, and that basically you can close, you can pin, or you can tab panels. So you can use this control box to do that. So all the dockable panels I mentioned are all the panels except for the map panel, and you can reposition them and basically auto hide them. So some of them are auto hide already, but you can pin them and bring them back and set them back to auto hide. All right. So sometimes when you would close a panel using this close button, so if you're looking at the map control again, you click that X, then it goes away completely from the interface. So it's no longer visible. So if you want to bring it back, you can go to the View menu to Windows, and then it will have a list of the panels that are available, and it will be unchecked, and you would just recheck it, and then it would become visible again. You can also use the reset windows, and that will basically reset all the windows to their original form, right? Their default form. So even if you're docking them in different places, and it will return them all to their original location. All right, so that's very handy if you're using TBEST to do a lot with the panels. Okay, so let's talk about the contents of the routes panel. And so essentially, whenever you open a transit system network scenario and you start evaluating what's in it, the routes is probably the first place that you go to see at the route level, what do I have in my network, right? So essentially, this is a list of all the routes in your network. And basically, every route would contain directional patterns. And when I talk about patterns, route patterns, those are the unique paths that that the vehicle would traverse for a particular route by direction, right? So it could be that any one particular route could have one pattern, or it could have 20 or 30 patterns, depend on how it's scheduled, right? So it's essentially the scheduled traverses and paths of the route as it relates to the schedule, right? And it's basically the same setup as the GTFS. So if you're familiar with GTFS, it's basically the same setup. It has the same shape ID. We populate that in TBEST so you can see it. All right, so some of the attributes that you have are the route name, the description, the route type, which will define the technology, being whether it's bus or a premium mode. We have different technology types as well. A minimum layover percentage, the cost per mile, the capacity in terms of the number of seats on the bus or other vehicle that serves that particular route. So notice that these are all route dependent. So cost, you can have a specific cost on a particular route. Probably doesn't happen that often, but certainly there are areas of the country where they have different transit systems are very large in scale, and they have different cost measures by different sections. And so you certainly can have variations in cost across routes. So you're allowed to do that in TBEST as well. You have capacity, you have the number of weekdays, Saturday and Sunday annual service days by route. And then certainly this is important for seasonal routes. So if you only have service in the summer or during school sessions, you can set the number of service days so that if you do annualize anything in TBEST, that particular route would be representative of its annual service, which would only be for a season. You have the base fare, the transfer fare, and you can also define interline routes. So all of those are definable at the route level within TBEST, and we'll show you tools to manage that and work with all those attributes. Okay, so the routes panel then kind of works together with, sorry, the map panel works together. Oh, sorry, typo. The map panel works together with the routes panel to display the operational and user layers. So basically, whatever you select in the map or you select in the list of routes, that will show up as selected in the map or vice versa in the routes panel. So, and you can select routes, segments, and stops via the map. You can identify map features very similar to just a regular GIS identify. We also have a route identify tool. So that is really handy and where it allows you to identify route patterns in a list. So you can basically select all the route patterns or identify them at a certain location across multiple routes. Pardon me. And then you have the quick link for the base map. So you can get to a variety of base maps that are very handy to change your perspective on what's on the ground so that you can easily digitize routes through parking lots, through areas that aren't necessarily on the roadway, or visualize aerial imagery, etc. Export map data. So basically, this is the export map data tool right here. So that will basically take out your data to either ArcGIS Online or to a mobile geodatabase. And then you also have a map image to clipboard right beside it. So that will take it out to the clipboard. So you have a clear button. This will clear everything in the map. So very handy to be able to do that. And also a measure tool, and you can change the scale, etc. Some basic tools that are available. All right, so let's clear this out. And close it. All right, so just in terms of the Esri base map, so you have availability through the quick link base map. So that was on the previous slide. That was under your base map section up in the upper right. But you can also get to a more detailed listing of all of the different ArcGIS Online base maps that are available. So if you see in our list here, you have 20 or 30 different base maps that you're able to get to in this list that you can just play around with. You can hit the apply button, see if it adds value to your map, and if there's anything in it that you could utilize for either cartographic reasons or network coding or map making. However you want to display your information, you have a lot of options for displaying it in different modes and different ways. So that's a great reference for anyone to develop the map output that they want to have for TBEST. Okay. Okay, so we haven't talked too much about how TBEST manages information for by time period, because whenever we're estimating ridership, one of the main components of that is we're doing it by time of day. So we have to define what the time of day means, right? So the definitions that we have in TBEST are for the weekday, we have AM peak, off peak, PM peak, and night. And you can see the different spans in terms of each period from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. for AM peak, et cetera. And then for Saturday and Sunday, they're just the full 24 hours of service, or 24 hours a day. So it's basically all day for Saturday and Sunday. But for the weekday, we need to define, there are peak periods when we're, the commuting periods, et cetera. So, so that's when we're talking, a lot of times we'll talk about TBEST time periods and say AM peak and off peak and all that. Just for your reference, this is what we're talking about and the spans that we're talking about in terms of time. Okay, so the next panel to talk about, and the reason that we're mentioning the time periods is because we start to look at the segments panel, and essentially it's made up of route pattern segments. So it is the linear alignments, the details and the attributes of the linear alignments that make up the route patterns, right? So each segment connects to another segment, which would then make up the alignment for a route pattern. And each segment can have its own attributes. And so we store those in the segments panel. So you can see here in this illustration, you have the segment length, and maybe I can just do some annotating here to help you. You have the length here. So this is automatically calculated by TBEST and is, when you're network editing, it's just automatically calculating that. So that's not something you can edit other than physically edit or, through the network editor. We also have the route lookup. So it's basically telling you this is 29 eastbound. It's giving you the pattern ID and then an internal ID for TBEST for the actual segment ID. So this, again, is not editable directly in this panel. You can edit the route name and direction and all that elsewhere, but not in this panel. Segment ID is editable. Corridor ID is editable. And then you have, for the different 6 time periods, remember we mentioned 6 time periods, this is the in-vehicle time. So IVTT is equal to in-vehicle travel time for each of those segments. So for the first segment on our eastbound 29, it's 13.3 minutes to travel that segment in the AM peak. And then the next segment, 6.5 minutes, and then 5.5 minutes, right? So that makes up the travel times for these segments. All right, so that's what we have as an editable set of attributes. So all these are editable. In the travel times, those are all editable. The first 2 columns are not. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the stops panel. So stops also kind of corresponds to what's in the map. So segments are selectable on the map and in the list. Routes are selectable in their list and on the map. Stops are selectable in the list and on the map. So all of them are selectable and interchange on the map. So this gives you the list of route pattern stops in the network. So for TBEST, every stop is assigned to a pattern. So when you look at this in terms of the owning route pattern for a stop, what you get, and I'll annotate again here, is on this panel, you have the routes. So here's the owning route. So it's 15 eastbound and the pattern is 40014. The stop name, basically this will come from the GTFS. If you're importing from GTFS, it will bring that in with it as well as the description. The time point is defined from the GTFS if it was in the GTFS, and then it's able to locate that and say that this particular stop is a time point. You can also go to the view mode right here. So sorry, I'm drawing over my circles, but you have the view mode here. Oh, sorry, here's the view mode where you can toggle the visibility of stops using this. So you have 4 modes. We'll talk about that in depth. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but it's toggling the visibility of stops. You also have stop attributes for special generators. So you can see you have special generators right here. You also have access to view socioeconomic data at the stop level, and you can also view service information here as well. So the service information is not editable here. It's editable elsewhere. It's just a roll up at this level, but you can see it at the stop level, which is handy. What is also handy here is it shows you the in-vehicle time between each stop. So you're seeing the stops in sequence here, and this is the in-vehicle time between each one. And then you also see the number of arrivals and the AM peak. So here's the time period we're talking about and the headway for that time period for this particular route pattern. So there's kind of a lot going on in the stops panel. And so we're definitely going to talk about this a lot more, but this is just an introduction to it. And one other item that you can see here is that you see that you have a certain number of visible stops and total stops. So 69 of 8,619 are visible, and you have 1 of 69 that are visible is selected. So, so just another kind of additional information you have about your selections and what's visible on the map. Okay, so that is the overview of the stop panel. Like I said, we're going to be going over this a lot, so it's just an introduction. You will definitely get it in the end. Okay, I mentioned the view mode. So here at the bottom of the stops panel is the view mode. So there are 4 types here. You have all stops visible, which is right here. And so that just means that every stop in the network is visible doesn't matter whatever the context, they're all visible. The other option is selected stops visible. So if you have a selection of stops, and you just want to see those that are selected in the list, you hit this button and it will filter them and just show on the map and in the list only those that are selected. The other one is the active route pattern stops visible. So if you're editing a particular route pattern, it's in edit mode, which we'll talk about later. Then only those are visible. And then finally, and this is the default mode where no stops are visible. So whenever you open up a network for the first time, none of the stops will be visible just for drawing purposes and readability purposes. But you can always turn stops off and on, right? Okay. Okay, so the render routes panel is another panel that's basically on the right side, and it just gives you some default, just basic editing for the symbols that make up the default symbols of the network. So the default line type, the default stop symbol, and the active route stop symbol and the active route line symbol, you can change those and then save them as your default so that every time that you use TBEST, it will use your renderings rather than the default ones. And you can always come back and restore the defaults if you need to. So you can change the color, the width. You can't change, there's not a lot of change you can do here. It's pretty simple editing. Maybe in the future we'll have more advanced editing for this, but for this version, we have more simplified editing. So just really width and color, and that's about it for the default symbols. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about route types and modes because we are going to mention those as we go forward. So we have different transit route types. So we were looking those in the routes panel. We have radial, crosstown, circulator, BRT and circulator, BRT, express, rapid, community connector, flex, and a ski route. So, so basically, the types are defined for you. So meaning that they're definitions and descriptions. And some of these are sensitive. The types are kind of sensitive in the ridership estimation model. So you want to take some time to assess the route structure that you have and make sure that they're defined correctly. The majority of your routes are going to be radial, crosstown, circulator, or express, with radial probably being the majority in crosstown, right? Circulators kind of define themselves. They're usually, in a circular loop or go in one direction. And there are some caveats to that as well, but and rapid is an overlay type of route. Community connector is kind of like an express route, except it's really connecting rural communities into the city rather than pure commuter like urban express routes. Flex routes are where you have flag stops or routes operating in a fixed area, but you don't have a lot of fixed stops maybe. So I know there's certainly that out in some people run those types of routes. And then the ski route that really originated out in Salt Lake City, where they had, all the ski resorts that had, bus service out to them. And so we created that ski type route. But really, that's a resort. So if you're running service to maybe a resort type of setting, then that you could call it the ski route. The other types are transit technology type, so bus, light rail, commuter rail, heavy rail, ferry, people mover, streetcar, and other. So, TBEST, whenever you're importing from a GTFS, it will see what's defined in the GTFS and categorize those correctly. So if you have those types defined in your GTFS, it will bring them in as those types. For the transit route types, it sometimes has to guess as to what, because they're not defined in the GTFS. So if you have express in the name or rapid in the name, it will automatically kind of assume that it's an express route. But certainly you want to go through and check them and make sure that they're kind of following along with the definitions in TBEST. Okay, so another item in the render routes panel is you can switch out of the default render mode and into a route type render or a mode type render. So it's one of the reasons we just explained the different types is because you can use those types as you've just defined them to display your network very simply by changing this display, right? So you can do this route type render option. And I'm sorry, I need to show you what I'm talking about because you probably don't know. But this route type render option, if you set that in the display, then it switches the full TBEST display to show by route type or mode, right? And then you can control the line widths and stop sizes and whether different route types are visible or mode types are visible. So you can create kind of a map that is a specific maybe to what you would want to see, right? And whenever you're done, you just switch it back and it's right back into edit mode. So it's very, very easy to create this and then switch back. So it's just a quick and easy way to show what route types are in your network, where they're at. And then if you want to create a map using these and export it, that's certainly very possible. Okay. Okay, same with transit mode render. This is by mode instead of route type. So same thing, if you wanted to display your information by transit mode render option, you can do that and then save the symbol changes and that you would modify, and then it would be there when you got back, when you came to it back again. Okay, so our next panel is the map control. So if everyone that's familiar with GIS is familiar with a list of layers, GIS layers, and certainly TBEST is a GIS intrinsically GIS application where we have a map that serves a lot of purposes for network editing and analysis and even adding user data. So meaning you can add your own data to the map versus what TBEST, whenever you create a network and you're creating your transit system, you use it parcel data and routes and stops and the census data. All that gets created for you, but you can also add other layers to the map. And when you add those data layers into the map, you can change the layer properties, you can remove them, you can move the layers around. You can't edit the default properties from here for the TBEST layers, and you can't remove them. So you can see in the example here that we have our TBEST default layers. And in this case, it's links, right? So links is in Orlando, the transit system in Orlando. So that's the name of the transit system. So these are the operational layers that you cannot remove and you can't really change the attributes for them or the symbols for them directly in the map control. But you can change it for a user layer. So our neighbor link here is a user layer. So I can change the properties, meaning the symbols for it in here. And the user layer can be an ArcGIS online layer, and it can be a local mobile geodatabase, and it can be a shapefile. Okay, so here's the user layer properties where you can set the definition filter, so you can build a query statement to filter the layer feature visibility. So in this case, the example is route direction equal to westbound. So this is just a layer we added that had a route direction field and had a westbound as an attribute. And you then, when you add this expression, you apply it, only those in your user layer that meet this criteria, those features will be displayed in the map. You can also add a label using whatever fields are in the user layer, and you can set the symbol for it. Okay, here is adding user layer data. As I mentioned, local shapefiles in mobile geodatabase, but you can also add ArcGIS Online, feature layer service, or feature collections. So there are really three modes for adding ArcGIS Online layers. You can view available organizational feature layers, and that's by default. So if you notice here, it says Service Edge Solutions, ArcGIS Online portal layers. When you access, that's our organization. However, when you access it, it will say your organization. And in this list of ArcGIS Online layers, by default, when this is selected, it will show you your layers that are in your organization that you have access to that you can add to the map. So it integrates with your ArcGIS Online, so you can bring that data in, whatever it is, into TBEST, right? Feature layer, feature service layers, and feature collections. You can also search public ArcGIS Online layers. So in this case, we searched for Gainesville, and we found this Gainesville city limits, and it gives you a thumbnail of it when you select it. So you can just add the layer to the map, and it will come into your map, and you can do something with it. It also gives you the owner and when it was created. You can also add, just specifically from a feature service URL, this option. So if you have the URL for a feature service, you click this, just paste it in, and it add layer, it'll add it to the map. So multiple options for getting data from ArcGIS Online into TBEST. Okay, so data export. So there is a local data export. So that can come from the map or it come from lists, right? So if you're exporting from the routes panel or the stops or the segments panel, you can export that as Excel or CSV. The routes panel, you can export to GTFS. So if you select a group of routes, you can export those to GTFS. There are some cases you export to PNG. You can take clipboard, uh, copy to the clipboard for maps and different like market analysis, things like that. You can export to mobile geodatabase. You cannot export to shapefile, unfortunately. So just so you know, that export option is not available in the runtime. Okay. You can also export to ArcGIS Online. So basically, when you do this, you're exporting the full map, meaning the symbology, the data, everything that's in the current TBEST map will go out to ArcGIS Online to either a feature layer or to a map. So the default is feature layer. So that's this option, ArcGIS Online content type. You can place it in the base folder, so that's the default. But if you have folders that you have access to in ArcGIS Online, it will load those in, and you can place your export into a specific folder. So if you have a TBEST folder that's on your ArcGIS Online account, you can place it into that. It will automatically populate the tags and a description. Every time you pop up a map, it will give you the whatever it's relative to. It will give you some tags and descriptions. You can edit those. And then basically what you need to do is give it a name. So whatever the export name is, you give it to it. The option here is to open export in ArcGIS Online. So basically, whenever you click OK, it will create the feature layer in ArcGIS Online and then open it in a browser so you can view it. Okay. All right, so this is what it looks like in online. So we just selected all the routes in a TBEST network. We exported it out to ArcGIS Online, and then in the online world, then you have your ability to make it organize public. So if you wanted to publish this map, you could make it public and then embed it in, a site or a link or however you would want to embed it in a site or, distribute it. So you can open this data in ArcMap, or I'm sorry, ArcGIS Pro. So using ArcGIS Online, you can go to the contents and open an ArcGIS Pro. Very easy to do. You can modify the map properties and you can perform ArcGIS Online statistical analysis and modify the map rendering here. So there's a lot you can do online. So once you get the data out of TBEST, you can then use some online data to share it for public meetings, for different types of publications, however you want to share this data out, either internally or externally, you can do that. Okay, so we have a 15-minute exercise where we're going to go over utilizing some basic TBEST map navigation selection tools. So Sam will join the TBEST exercise room breakout room, and you can work independently there, or you can follow along with me, whichever you would like to do. And then we'll get started. We'll do this in 15 minutes, so I will set my timer.
We
And
do have one question in the
oh,
Q&A.
sorry. Yep. All right, so the question is, if a GTFS feed includes service IDs that represent seasonal services, say university semester, can we focus on different service patterns demand for each session within TBEST? Right. So essentially you would have to create three probably scenarios. One would be network scenarios where you have a in-season, semester, and it could be a fall and spring. They're different. And then you have your summer semester, or summer sessions, which would be obviously probably reduced capacity, right? So they would represent three scenarios rather than a single scenario, right? And if you're going to annualize that, then that becomes, well, then you have to do it on a per month, like how many days would each one be in service for each one and then roll them up together. So that is not a common workflow maybe, but not impossible. Okay, so we have another question that is for exporting to GTFS. The slide said routes only. Does that mean only the routes layer can be exported to GTFS, or that what is exported is only the routes.txt table? No, it's the whole feed. All the service, everything goes out when you export. But the point of that slide was saying that there are two places to export GTFS. One is through the routes panel where you would select specific routes that you want to export. And the other is in TBEST Explorer panel where you would just export the entire system, right? So one is interactive where you can select which one, and the other is just the entire system. So that's the difference in the reason between the two. But yes, in either case, it's the entire, it's the full GTFS, not just routes.txt. Okay, all right, great. So let's, nothing else, we'll start up the exercise and then we'll come back in 15 minutes.
Right.
Okay, so I'm starting out on section 2.5, TBEST UI Components, utilizing basic TBEST map navigation and selection tools. So in TBEST Explorer, within the Gatorville Trans System, we're going to navigate to the Network Scenarios folder for the fall and find the fall 2024 scenario, right? So this is our Network Scenarios folder, and we have fall 2024. So we're going to right click on it and select Open Scenario Network Editor. And because we have paused, It will ask us to log in again, so I just need to enter this in. Do that. Then once I've logged in, it just comes back in. So there is a pause and a timeout. So if you sit and just have TBEST sit for a while, when you go to open and load the base maps, it's going to ask you to log back in. Okay. Okay, so item 2 on the TBEST map panel, select OpenStreetMap from the base map dropdown. So here is our base map dropdown. We can select OpenStreetMap from it. All right, so very quick. And of course, if you zoom in, you can see additional detail with this that you aren't getting with the default outdoor base map. So, and of course we can switch. So if we want to go to an aerial imagery, very quickly show the aerial imagery for this area, right? So very easy to switch between. We can also go to this custom base map option, where then we can select from, we showed this in the slide, all the different types of Esri published base maps. So, like the dark gray, if we try that. So here is just a, like a dark theme that we can use as well. And so very easy to switch between, and then it's a whole new look for how we're viewing our TBEST map. Okay, so we can switch back to outdoor map. All right. Okay, item 3 is use the pointer tool located in the map panel toolbar to pan the map. So this is your panner, right? So the pointer tool, when this is selected, you can easily pan the map, right? No problem. When this is selected, if you hold the when you hold the shift key down, you can click and hold and drag, and it will zoom in to that area when you are using this tool. All right. You can also use the plus and minus buttons to zoom in as well. All right. So notice that the scroll wheels will zoom in and out. So that's simple. The plus and minus buttons, and then all of that is fine. All right. So couple other things that you may notice if you hold the control key down here and I'm in the pan mode, wherever I move my mouse to, it will kind of pan to that area. So that's just kind of a default characteristic of this map. So just holding the control key down will pan you around if you move your mouse. Okay, so on item 5, the select features on the map tool enables route segment and stop selection via the map. Select the routes option in the dropdown. So we have routes selected. Now we want to use this select features on the map tool. So when we do that, we get a different cursor on the map so we can easily see that. So what we can do is we can basically single click on a route or a location where multiple routes may be, and it will select those routes at that location. We can also click and hold and drag and select all those routes that intersect with the box that we just dragged. Okay, and then hold the Alt key down to drag and add to the existing selection. So if we have a selection here that we have and we want to add to it, we can hold the Alt key down and click and hold and drag, and then it will add those what we have selected in that box to the list of selected routes. Alternatively, when we're in the selection mode, we can hold the control key down. I'm holding the control key down and selecting again, and it removes that selection. All right, notice that whenever we have routes selected in the map, they're also selected here in the list of routes, right? So we have 4 routes that are selected, 5, 10, 40, and 43. They are blue here in the list, but they have a color in the map. So the color is defined from the GTFS generally, when it's brought in, GDFS has the color of the route. So we use that color. You can change the color at any time in TBEST, but the map will always display with the colors, and that you should see that same color in the little vehicle icon next to the route. And generally this icon is relative to the mode. So if it's bus, it will be a bus. If it's a ferry, it will be a little ship. Rail will be a train, etc. Right? So it's just a quick look and see what type it is in terms of mode. Okay. On to part 2. On the TBEST routes panel, click Route 1, which is the downtown station to Butler Plaza. So over here in the routes list, we're just going to click this. Let's expand this a little bit. Use the shift click to Route 7 to select along with all other routes in between Route 1. So if we find Route 15, hold the shift key down, it will select all the routes between 1 and 15. So that's pretty standard selection technique for most tools. And so we can use the control click to then add additional routes. So I can just hold control key down and, oh, sorry, we're only supposed to go to 7. And shift to 7 and then control 15. So it would add 15 into it. So you can also use control A to select everything. So if when I'm in the route list, have any one selected, I can hit control A and it will select all. All right, and the note here is the above shortcuts will also work for the segments panel and the stops panel. All right, so the next one is export the current map to ArcGIS Online. All right, so, oh, sorry. Item 4, we're going to zoom to selected. So if I just right click on the list of routes, I can select the zoom to selected option and it will zoom over to it. And then on item 5, we're going to export to ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to use the export map data button. And I'm going to use the, when it asks me to select the TBEST data export option, I'll select ArcGIS Online. Notice that local data export is also available. Okay, so basically we're going to accept the defaults. We're going to put this in the base folder. I could put this in the TBEST folder if I wanted to. I do have a TBEST folder in my ArcGIS Online, so I could put it there. I do have the ability to make this a map or a feature layer. So feature layer will be usually is what I export to. It just has more functionality than a map for normally, for sharing data. But you certainly can do a map. So in this, we're just going to add Gatorville 2024 route map as the name, and we're just accept the tags. It gives us TBEST, Transit, Gatorville. If we wanted to add another tag, we'd put a semicolon in and add another tag, or change the description. So that's it. So we just hit OK, and we'll say generating ArcGIS Online content. And when it's done, it will give us this, the ArcGIS Online TBEST export completed successfully. Just click OK. And then over in my browser window, I have our map that we had in TBEST, our Gatorville 2024 route map that has these different layers in it, and we can turn them on and off in here. And we can then work with it inside of ArcGIS Online. So this can be shared, open in ArcGIS Pro. There's lots of things that you can do with it once you get it to online. So, so very handy to be able to do this and share this information out and the map itself out. Okay, so we don't need it. It's just an export. At this point, it's stored in our ArcGIS Online content, so we can come back to it at any time. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the site. And you may have had to log in yourselves. So when I did it, I was already logged in to ArcGIS Online, but it may ask you in your browser to log in. So just go ahead and log in with your same credentials that you logged in with TBEST, and then it will open the map up. All So I'm just going to cancel the export button, and then I'm going to clear the route selection. So this clear all selections. I can also clear this map selection. So this is just clearing the routes. So I can just clear this. Okay. So the next section is exercise part 3. So this is the render route TBEST render routes panel. And it's saying expand the render routes panel by hovering over its tab on the right-hand side of the TBEST window. So if you see where I'm at here, it says render routes. So if I hover over it, it expands it out so that I can see all of it. So if I think the instruction here is to pin it. So we want to use this auto hide pin. So right now it's set to auto hide. So if we pin it, then it gets put into a stack here with the routes panel on the right-hand side. So now it's pinned. So we can then unpin it if we want to, but I think we want to change the display to just show the route type render. So you can see that it switches the rendering of the routes to be by route type. So you can see in the list, we have radial, circulator, crosstown express. And basically, I think in our list here, we just have radial and circulator and crosstown. So we don't have a lot of route types in the Gainesville system. So you can make them visible in the map. So if I turn them off, they're no longer visible. You can change their stop size, line width, and save the changes when you're done. So we won't go through all those steps. It's more of just letting you know that it's there. And if you want to, play with that and see how you can, produce a map that you would like, then certainly you can do that. All right, so the other type is transit mode render. So again, it's the same type of situation, except we're just using the TBEST modes, same editing capabilities, ability to save it. When we're done with the render types, and these are purely optional, we're just showing you that they're here, they're optional for you. So we'll enable the edit mode. So now when we do that, we're all the way back into our edit mode, and we're back in our normal kind of operating and selecting routes and all that. So it's normal operating conditions. Whenever you go into these different render types, it's a limited interface where you can only get to a few tools. So, all right. All right, so we no longer need the render routes panel, so we're going to auto hide it again. So we will just click on the auto hide, and it goes back on the right-hand side, and it will pop out whenever we hover over it. So we can always come back to it if we need to. All right. So that's that. The only thing left to do is just close this scenario. So the close button is up here on the right-hand side. So it says, when you hover, it says close network scenario. And if you click that, it will close everything out, and we're back to where we started with just in using our TBEST Explorer window. Okay, great. Okay, so any questions? Nothing's in the question list. So, all right, so let's move on to our next section.